Future Dana here. We're trying to reach 10,000 subscribers, and you can help us out by sharing the channel and clicking the subscribe button. And when we reach 10,000, we're going to do a giveaway. So if you want to know what that's about, help us out. Hi, Dana here. Welcome to Solar and Create. I'm glad you joined us today. And if you like what we do here, be sure you click that subscribe button and the bell notification. We also have a Patreon page with multiple tiers where you can support us in that way. And on my Etsy shop, I have sewing kits for most of the tutorials on the channel, and I'm adding new things for the upcoming season. For today's project, it's the third one in our Christmas ornament series, and it's the Pieced Christmas Tree. And on that series, you can find it under the Christmas in July playlist with some other ornaments. So if you haven't watched those, be sure you check those out. So let's get started. For today's project, the Pieced Christmas Tree, you're going to need the following supplies. You're going to need some paper to create your pattern, and I'll show you how to do that. You're going to need some fabric strips, and those strips can be different widths, but they need to be, the base of your tree needs to be about 6.5 inches wide, and then you can stack them in size up from there. So these are the pieces I'm going to use. So this is a great scrap buster project. Then you're also going to need a piece of felt for your trunk, and that is 2 inches long by 1.5 inches wide. You're going to need a bigger piece of fabric. This is a 10-inch square, but you won't need quite that much to make the back of your Christmas tree, and it is a solid piece of fabric. And then you're also going to need some medium or lightweight interfacing, and we're going to fuse this to our strip, and that will help give some more structure to our ornament. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our pattern. And so the easiest way to create this triangle, because it's not an equal-sided triangle, the sides are longer than the base, is I want my base to be 5 inches wide. So I folded my paper in half, measured 2.5 inches, and then I wanted my sides to be 6 inches long. So I took my 6-inch ruler, lined it up here on my base, and then just made it to where the tip is right there and drew my line. And then we'll cut that out. That way you make sure if you do it this way that your sides are equal, and it's just an easy way to get it nice and straight. So this will be our pattern. And it does have the seam allowance included. As you can see, when we stitch it up, it does have that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So there's our pattern. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sew our strips together. And I'm going to start here at the bottom with my longest 2 strips. And it doesn't have to be even, as you can see, this one is kind of wider on this end than this, and that really doesn't matter. And I'm going to put these 2 pieces together, and I'm going to kind of center them if they're not the same length, and I'm going to put a clip. And then I know I want these 2 pieces next, so I'm going to put these 2 together. Again, if they're not even, just kind of centering them, because your tree is going to come up the center of your pieced part. And then I have this one that I'll add. So I'm going to go to the machine, and I'm going to stitch across here, open those up, stitch them, and then add this one to the top. So let's go to the machine. Now we're going to sew our strips together, and we're going to use the outside edge of our foot, which gives us a little over 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm starting right where my second strip begins, not at the very end. And I'm just going to go all the way across. And then to save a little bit of time and thread, I'm going to chain piece my next unit. So I'm going to just go off the edge of the first one, lift my presser foot slightly, put my second unit in there, and just keep going. And then this is my base. So I had this on the bottom, then this next strip, and then I had this piece, and then that one. So I'm going to take my 2 units and put them together. And again, remember, I'm just going to try to kind of put that in the center as best I can, so that when I put my triangle pattern on there, it will fit. Again, I'm going to line it up using that 1/4 of an inch and go all the way across. Then I'm going to add my last piece right here at the top. Again, trying to center it and piece that one across. Now we have all our pieces together. We'll go back and make sure that it's big enough. Now we need to make sure that our fabric is big enough. So the first thing you want to do is kind of press it, because when it's pressed it lays flat, and you can see. And I'm going to put my pattern up here and see, oh, this one is just barely big enough, and that makes me a little nervous. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and add another piece, but I really want this poinsettia fabric at the top. So I'm going to add my extra piece down here to the bottom, and when I do that, then that gives me more than enough to make sure that I have room to really cut that the proper way. So I'm going to go add this, and then I'll be back. So I've added this piece at the bottom, and I've now pressed it, and I want to make sure that I press it nice and flat. Then I'm going to take my pattern piece and I'm going to cut out my interfacing. And my interfacing, I know it's kind of hard to see on camera, but it has a shiny side where the glue is, and then the matte side is where the front part, and the glue goes to the back of your ornament. So I'm going to put this over here, and I always like to go to the edge where I can conserve my supplies. And I'm just going to draw that out. And cut my interfacing shape. Then I'm going to flip my strip pieces that I put together and put the pretty side or the face down. I'm going to take my interfacing, and this is my shiny side, so I want that to go where the glue side or the shiny side is towards the back of my fabric. And then I can kind of play around with the placement of where I want. I want more of this poinsettia fabric at the top, so I'm going to push it up a little bit. So see, I'll have a little bit of every strip, and then a pretty good tip at the top. And the reason I didn't want it to come too close is when I stitch that, it's really going to come down to about right there. And then I'm going to press that, and you just put your iron down for a couple of seconds, and then lift your iron up, and it fuses that interfacing to your stripped piece. And this being kind of a medium weight, you do have to hold it just a little bit longer than you would if you were using a lightweight interfacing. And then you can kind of test it by running your fingernail, and you can tell that it's kind of adhered there. And then I always like to flip mine over and iron it from the front side. And the reason we're putting our interfacing on before we cut out our triangle is that stabilizes these long sides, whereas if you cut this out, then it would have a tendency to stretch. So then you have your interfacing, and that becomes now your pattern. And you just cut it out, going right up next to that interfacing. And now we have the front of our tree. Then I've already pre-cut my back, and so I'm just going to use that one. But you would do the same thing. You would take your pattern, lay it down, and cut out this backing piece. So the next part we're going to do is we're going to go back to the machine, and we're going to put these two pieces right sides together. And we're going to stitch all the way around, but we need to leave an opening right here at the bottom to insert our trunk after we've stitched it. And that way your trunk lays down flat. If you sewed it in, then you folded it over, it would have a tendency to flip a little bit. So I'm going to insert it after. So you can see here's my front and my back, right sides together. And I'm going to use my red and green clip down here at the bottom. So green is where I'm going to start my stitching, red is where I'm going to stop. And I just want to make sure that I leave a big enough opening for that trunk. And that should work. And then I always like to clip it right here at the top on one side and then just kind of down the other side. So we're going to go to the machine. We're going to stitch starting here at green, go all the way around to the red and stop. We're going to start here at our green, so I'm going to remove that clip. And again, I'm using the outside edge of my foot as my seam allowance. And as you can see, my backing is just slightly larger than my front piece. So I want to make sure that when I'm stitching, I'm aware of that when I turn. Then I'm going to put my needle down, lift my presser foot, line it back up, and see I have a little bit of extra, but this is, I want to make sure I get this stitched well. And then just keep going. When you get to the point, you're not going to go all the way up. You're going to stop, because when you lift and turn that, that's going to create your point. And again, you can see it's going to be further down than the top pieces of my fabric. And I'm going to lower it, lining up my edges good here, and keep going. And when I round this last corner, I know I need to stop about right there. So I'm just going to take my clip off, leave my finger, so I know that I need to leave this bigger opening down here at the bottom. And back stitch a little bit. Now we'll go back to the mat and turn it right side out. Now we've stitched all the way around, and I like to turn my piece over and make sure that I've caught all my backing fabric, because now is the time to fix it. Then before we turn, we want these corners to be kind of at a pretty good angle. So we're going to clip across diagonally, making sure we don't clip our stitching on all those points. And that will just reduce the bulk and help it turn a little better. And then right here at the top, I'm also going to just slightly taper, cutting away just a little bit more of that fabric. So when I turn it, I've got a little bit less fabric to deal with. So you can see I just slightly tapered that top edge. Then you're going to take it and turn it right side out. So just put your finger up in there, go to the point, and then pull that out. And then this is where your chopstick's going to be extremely helpful, just to gently push that point up at the top and at the bottom. You just want to be sure you push gently so that you don't rip your stitching. And it comes out pretty pointy at the top. And the same thing on the sides. And then I'm going to iron it. I just want to make sure that when I do that, this opening down here at the bottom, those pieces fold in and make a nice edge. See if I can get this one corner out just a little bit better. Yeah. Now, if you wanted to stuff your tree and make it more three-dimensional, now would be the time to add your polyfill in there. But I like these ornaments kind of flat. That's my preference. But they do turn out really cute if you stuff them. So then we've left this opening. We're going to insert our trunk. And how far up is kind of dependent on you. You can leave just a little bit. You just want to make sure you have a little over 1/4 of an inch so that when you stitch it, it catches. And you can have a longer tree trunk, or you can push it in and have a very short trunk. And when you get your trunk the way you like it, then just put a little clip on one side to hold it in place while you go to the machine. Then when we go to the machine, we're going to top stitch. So we're going to take a very narrow seam allowance all the way around. That will close the opening and add our trunk. So let's go to the machine. One thing I want to check before I start stitching is I want to flip it over and make sure that this edge at the back is turned nicely and not turned up or caught. So we're going to start right here on just above where our tree trunk is. That should be pretty close to the opening that we have at the bottom. And we're going to do a very narrow seam. So I'm going to use the inside edge of my foot as my guide. And we're going to go all the way around. And you are dealing with a little bit of bulk there in the corner. So if you need to, if your machine struggles to get started, then you can hand crank that, and that usually helps. Then when I get back to this stitching, I'm going to cross it just slightly and back stitch to secure it. Now we'll go back to the mat and add our embellishments. Now if you want to embellish your tree, it looks perfectly fine like this, so you wouldn't have to add any. But I thought it would be kind of cute to add a gold bell up here at the top. You could also add a star button if you liked that. And to add that, you're just going to take and hand sew it on. So I'm going to start up here at the top. And I want it pretty close, so I'm going to thread my thread through there, then thread my bell. Because your bell has kind of a shank opening there, just like a shank button. And then I like to put it back through with the bell kind of loose and then slowly pull my bell in place. And that way I kind of get it in the position that I want it. And then if you come back from the back side and pull your thread all the way, then feed it through your shank. Try not to knot your thread, of course. There we go. I've put it through my shank, and then I'm going to go back down. And just once or twice on that will secure that, because it is an ornament. It's not going to get, a lot of abuse. And then just tie it off here at the back. This thread is, there we go. And I always do a double knot when I tie something off. Now you could make, on my original one, I made my hanger out of my leftover thread. And if you wanted to do that, you would just kind of loop it over your finger and then double knot it down here. But on this one, I'm going to add a hook, just a regular Christmas tree hook. And you just don't want to try to go through all of those layers. You just want to try to go through the back layer here. So sometimes if you start it with a pen, this is kind of the tricky part. That may be why I did the other hanger. And I just kind of went underneath my knot that I have my bell on. That seemed to be easier. And then it's ready to hang on my tree. So our project is complete. I hope you liked today's project, the Peace Christmas Tree. And be sure to check on the playlist Christmas in July for some of the other ornaments we've done videos on. So, see you in the next one.